In this video, I'm going to take you into one of the most terrifying moments a sailor can face. Losing the keel of a sailboat during a storm, miles from land, in the middle of the Indian Ocean. This wasn't just a close call. It was a full-blown emergency at sea where every decision could mean the difference between survival and tragedy. But more than just recounting what happened, I'll show you the key lessons that came out of it. Lessons that every sailor needs to understand before they find themselves in deep trouble. From how to recognize early warning signs of structural failure to what you must do when your boat starts behaving differently underfoot. This story is packed with critical insights that might one day save your life. We'll break down the exact moment the keel detached, what I did in the seconds that followed, and how I managed to stay afloat and make it out alive. You'll see how preparation, quick thinking, and a little bit of luck all played their part. So whether you're an experienced offshore cruiser or just beginning your sailing journey, this is the kind of real-life scenario that reminds us the ocean doesn't forgive mistakes, but it does reward those who are ready. Grab a cup of coffee or strap in. This isn't just a story, it's a wake-up call. And it all started with a single sickening sound beneath the hull. Let's get into it. The Indian Ocean stretched endlessly before me, a vast, shimmering expanse that seemed to hum with secrets. I was Alex, a sailor with 20 years of salt. In my veins and my 40-foot sloop, Ocean Wanderer was my home, my sanctuary, my steed. She was a fiberglass beauty built for offshore cruising, with a sleek hull and a fin keel bolted to her underbelly, a design that promised speed and stability, or so I thought. I'd set out from Cape Town, South Africa, bound for Fremantle, Australia, a 5,000 nautical mile journey across one of the wildest oceans on Earth. The route would take me through the roaring Forties, where winds howl and waves tower, a crucible for any sailor. I was ready, or so I believed. The Ocean Wanderer was rigged for the long haul. I'd spent months preparing her, ticking off every item on the Category 1 offshore safety checklist. The boat carried a 406 MHz EPIRB, registered and tested, mounted on the stern rail with a hydrostatic release. A VHF radio with DSC capability sat in the nav station, alongside a satellite phone for emergencies. The life raft, a 6-person canister model with a Solus B grab bag, was lashed to the deck, ready to deploy. I'd fitted storm sails, a trysail, and a storm jib stowed in their bags below, and reinforced the companionway hatch with extra latches. The bilge pumps, one manual and one electric, were in working order, and I'd packed spares for everything from fuel filters to impellers, blades. My navigation suite included a chart plotter with AIS, a backup handheld GPS, and paper charts for the Indian Ocean, meticulously marked with waypoints. I used weather routing software to download grid files via sat phone, plotting my course to avoid the worst of the lows spinning up from the Southern Ocean. I'd sailed solo before, crossed the Atlantic twice, rounded the Horn once, but the Indian Ocean felt different. It was raw, untamed, a place where nature didn't negotiate. My first week out of Cape Town was textbook. Steady 15-20 knot winds from the northwest pushed Ocean Wanderer along at a comfortable 6 knots, her mainsail reefed to the first point, Genoa furled to 80%. I settled into the rhythm of solo sailing, 4-hour watches, scanning the horizon, checking the rigging, logging my position every hour. The autopilot, a trusty hydraulic unit, held course while I cooked meals on the gimbaled stove or caught naps in the quarter berth. Every day, I inspected the boat, chain plates, shrouds, turnbuckles, through hulls. I'd learned the hard way that small issues become big ones at sea. Once I noticed a faint trickle of water in the bilge, more than the usual condensation from the freshwater tank. I pumped it out, checked the seacocks, and chalked it up to a loose hose clamp. It was a small thing, but it nagged at me. By day 10, the weather began to shift. My Grib files showed a deepening low-pressure system approaching from the southwest, a beast of a storm with winds forecast to hit 50 knots and seas building to 10 meters. I altered course to the north, hoping to skirt the worst of it, and prepared the boat for heavy weather. I struck the mainsail, hoisted the storm jib, and secured loose gear below. The lifelines were taut, the jacklines clipped to my harness, and I double-checked the EPIRB's battery. The ocean began to growl, waves slapping the hull with increasing force. By midnight, the wind was screaming at 40 knots, and Ocean Wanderer was surfing down waves, her bow plunging into troughs. I hand-steered now, the autopilot struggling with the erratic seas. My foul weather gear was soaked, my hands numb despite gloves, but adrenaline kept me sharp. Then it happened. A sickening crunch, like metal tearing through bone, echoed from beneath the hull. The boat lurched violently to starboard, heeling at an impossible angle. My heart stopped. I knew that sound wasn't a wave or a log. It was catastrophic. I scrambled to the companionway, shining a flashlight into the bilge. Water was pouring in, not a trickle, but a torrent. The boat was rolling sluggishly, no longer responding to the helm. I knew instantly the keel was gone. A sailboat's keel is its backbone, a heavy fin that provides stability and counteracts the wind's force on the sails. Without it, a boat becomes a cork at the mercy of the sea. Fin keels, like the one on Ocean Wanderer, are typically bolted to the hull with stainless steel bolts, bedded in sealant to prevent leaks. But bolts can corrode, seals can fail, and the hull keel joint can weaken, especially if the boat has grounded in the past. I'd bought Ocean Wanderer second-hand, and though her survey was clean, I hadn't hauled her out myself to inspect the keel bolts. A grounding years ago, even a minor one, could have cracked the hull keel matrix, a fiberglass laminate that binds the keel to the boat. Under the pounding of a storm with cyclic loads stressing the bolts, that weakness could give way. I cursed myself for not checking more thoroughly. The boat was capsizing, waves crashed over the deck, and the cabin was tilting at 45 degrees. I grabbed the VHF, broadcasting a mayday on Channel 16. Mayday, 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 this is Ocean Wanderer, position 38 degrees, 70 degrees, keel detached, taking on water, one person on board, over. No response. The sat phone was next, but the signal was patchy in the storm. I activated the EPIRB, its red light flashing, as it began transmitting my distress signal to satellites. Time was running out. The bilge pumps were overwhelmed, and the water level was rising fast. I had minutes, maybe less, to abandon ship. Crawled to the lifer raft, clipped to the jacklin to avoid being swept overboard. The canister was heavy, but adrenaline gave me strength. I yanked the painter line, and the raft inflated with a hiss, bobbing violently in the waves. I tossed the grab bag, packed with water, food, flares, and a handheld VHF, into the raft and clipped it to the boat to keep it close. The storm was deafening now, wind shrieking, waves towering over the cockpit. I took one last look at Ocean's Wanderer, my home for weeks, and cut the raft free. As I leapt in, a wave slammed the boat, rolling her fully onto her side. She was gone. The lifer raft was a tiny speck in a churning sea. I zipped the canopy shut, securing myself inside with the safety straps. The storm's fury was relentless. Waves tossed the raft like a toy, and the cold seeped through my foul weathers. Gear. I checked the grab bag. 3 liters of water, energy bars, a knife, fishing line, and a PLB for backup. The handheld VHF crackled faintly, but I was too far from land for a signal. My only hope was the EPIRB, beaming my position to rescue coordinators. I rationed a sip of water, fighting nausea as the raft pitched. Fear clawed at me, but I forced myself to focus. Stay warm, stay hydrated, stay alive. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time blurred in the raft. The storm began to ease, winds dropping to 30 knots, but the seas remained heavy. I scanned the horizon for ships, firing a flare when I thought I saw a light. But it was just a trick of the waves. Exhaustion set in, my body aching from the constant motion. I thought of my family, my years at sea, the dreams that had led me here. The ocean didn't care about my story, but it had taught me respect, preparation, and resilience. I clung to that. Then a sound, a faint thrum, growing louder. A helicopter. Its spotlight pierced the dawn, sweeping over the raft. I fired another flare, waving frantically. They'd found me. The E-Perb had done its job, guiding a rescue team to my position, westward 200 miles from land. As the harness pulled me skyward, I looked back at the endless ocean, ocean wanderer somewhere beneath it. I'd survived, but the lessons were just beginning. The helicopter's roar faded into a distant hum as I was hoisted aboard, my body trembling from cold and exhaustion. The rescue team, a crew from an Australian maritime patrol, wrapped me in a thermal blanket and handed me a bottle of water. I was alive, but the weight of what had happened clung to me like damp salt. The ocean wanderer was gone, swallowed by the Indian Ocean, and with it, a piece of my soul. But survival wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of understanding what went wrong and how I could ensure it never happened again. The ocean had tested me, and now it was time to unpack the lessons, to rebuild not just my confidence, but my approach to sailing itself. In the raft, those endless hours had given me time to think. My mind kept circling back to the keel. How could it have failed so catastrophically? I'd always known that a fin keel, like the one on Ocean Wanderer, was a marvel of engineering, but also a potential weak point. The keel was a 6,000-pound lead bulb secured to the hull with 8 stainless steel bolts, each an inch thick, bedded in epoxy and backed by heavy washers. The design was meant to withstand the brutal forces of the sea, but no system is infallible. I'd read about keel failures before, boats like Cheeky Rafiki in the Atlantic, where the keel detached, leading to tragedy. The common thread in those stories was often a hidden flaw, a moment of neglect, or a failure to recognize the signs. I'd missed something, and it nearly cost me my life. Reflecting on the days before the storm, I recalled the trickle of water in the bilge. It wasn't much, maybe a cupful a day, but it was unusual. I'd checked the seacocks, the shaft seal, even the freshwater system, but found nothing obvious. In hindsight, that water was likely seeping through the hull keel joint, a sign that the bolts, or the fiberglass matrix around them, were compromised. A keel doesn't just fall off without warning. The forces of a storm, waves slamming the hull, the boat flexing under load, can exploit any weakness. If the boat had grounded in its past, even lightly, the impact could have caused micro cracks in the fiberglass laminate, invisible during a standard survey. Over time, water ingress could corrode the bolts or weaken the bond between the keel and hull. Cyclic loading, where the keel oscillates under sail, would widen those cracks like a paper clip bent back and forth until it snaps. I hadn't hauled Ocean Wanderer out for a full inspection before the voyage. The survey from the previous owner showed no issues, and I'd trusted it. That was my first mistake. A proper keel inspection requires dropping the keel, checking each bolt for corrosion, and examining the hull for signs of delamination or stress, cracks. It's time-consuming and expensive, but it's non-negotiable for offshore sailing. I'd also ignored the boat's history. She'd been a charter vessel before I bought her, likely sailed hard, and possibly grounded on a reef or sandbar. The damage might have been repaired cosmetically, hiding deeper flaws. If I'd known, I'd have insisted on a dye test or ultrasound of the keel joint, methods that can reveal hidden fractures in the fiberglass. The storm itself was the final straw. The Indian Ocean's roaring 40s are notorious for their ferocity, and this low-pressure system was a monster. Winds peaked at 60 knots, with gusts higher, and waves reached 15 meters, their crests breaking like avalanches. Ocean Wanderer was built for tough conditions, But no boat is immune to nature's extremes. The keel, already weakened, was subjected to immense shear forces as the boat surfed and slammed through the seas. Each wave was like a hammer blow, stressing the bolts until one or all gave way. The sickening crunch I'd heard was likely the final bolt shearing or the keel tearing free from the hull, leaving a gaping hole for water to flood in. In the aftermath, I replayed my response to the crisis. Activating the EPIRB was instinctive, a habit drilled into me from years of training. The device, a 406 MHz model with GPS, transmitted my position to the COSPAS SARSAT satellite network, pinpointing me within a few meters. Registering it with my details, name, boat, emergency contacts, ensured rescuers knew who they were looking for. The life raft deployment was another critical step. I'd practiced launching it in calm conditions, but doing it in a storm with waves crashing over the deck was a different beast. The hydrostatic release would have freed the raft if the boat sank, but I didn't wait for that. I pulled the painter line manually, ensuring the raft inflated before the boat capsized fully. That decision saved precious minutes. The grab bag was my lifeline in the raft. It contained 3 liters of water, enough for a few days if rationed, carefully, and high-calorie energy bars to stave off hunger. The handheld VHF, though useless without a nearby vessel, gave me a sliver of hope. Flares, parachute, and handheld were my signal to the world, and I'd fired one when I thought I saw a ship, though the storm's haze played tricks on my eyes. The PLB, a personal locator beacon, was a backup to the EPIRB, transmitting on the same frequency. I'd packed a fishing line and hooks, a knife, and a small first aid kit, all standard in a Solus B grab bag. The raft itself was a fortress, with double buoyancy tubes and a canopy to shield me from the elements. But nothing could shield me from the psychological toll, the fear, the isolation, the knowledge that survival depended on someone finding me in an ocean the size of a continent. The rescue, when it came, was a miracle of modern technology and human determination. The EPIRB signal had reached a rescue coordination center in Australia, which dispatched the helicopter. They'd tracked me to 38 degrees, 70 graus, a speck in the vastness. The crew told me later I'd been adrift for nearly 36 hours, though it felt like a lifetime. Hypothermia was setting in, my core temperature dropping despite the thermal blanket I'd wrapped myself in. The raft's floor was awash with seawater, and I'd fought nausea the entire time, sipping water to stay hydrated, but vomiting from the motion. When the helicopter's spotlight found me, I felt a surge of hope so intense it burned. Back on land in a hospital in Perth, I began to process the ordeal. The Ocean Wanderer was unrecoverable, likely resting on the ocean floor, her hull breached, and her story ended. But mine wasn't. I spent weeks dissecting what went wrong, talking to other sailors and studying keel failures. The lessons were stark. First, never skip a thorough keel inspection. Drop the keel, check the bolts for corrosion, and use non-destructive testing like ultrasound to detect cracks. Second, know your boat's history. A grounding even years ago can plant the seeds of failure. Third, trust your instincts. That trickle in the bilge wasn't normal. I should have investigated further, even mid-ocean. Fourth, invest in safety gear and know how to use it. The EPIRB, life raft, and grab bag were my salvation, but only because I'd tested them and practiced their use. Finally, respect the ocean. It's a teacher, but a harsh one. I'm back on the water now, crewing on a friend's boat, my confidence. Shaken, but rebuilding. I'm planning to buy another vessel, but this time I'll choose one with a full keel or an encapsulated keel, less prone to detachment, though heavier and slower. I'll haul her out annually, inspect every bolt, and never ignore a drip in the bilge. The Indian Ocean took Ocean Wanderer, but it gave me something in return, a deeper respect for preparation, a sharper eye for detail, and a story to share with every sailor I meet. The ocean doesn't forgive, but it rewards those who learn it's a Lessons, I'm still here, still sailing, and that's enough.